And I didn't want to be blind to it. I didn't want to do it. And I just thought, no more sacrifice for justice, right? No more sacrifice. I saw myself as doing what I could do instead to break the cycle of abuse. And not everybody likes the film. I'm so gratified that you guys do, those of you who do. Those of you who told me that you did. In the film, John talks about, one of the subjects talks about being cast out and about being called a danger to the flock. And there's something about that chills me to my marrow. Because when ideology supersedes our lived experience, the love and the ability to be in spirit, it's really terrifying. One of my early interviews with Brent Hawkes, the senior pastor at Metropolitan Community Church in Toronto, and the first pastor actually to perform same-sex marriage in Canada, it told me something that really stayed with me as we were discussing the same-sex marriage debates. I actually wangled myself a press pass to the Supreme Court hearings on same-sex marriage and shot a lot of it and got in shit because I was supposed to know where to stand and I didn't, and it was really funny. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Focus on the Family was there. They took out full-page ads in all of our national newspapers to stem the tide of anti-family practices in Canada. And they got themselves intervener status, which you guys called friend of the court status, to give their petition to the Supreme Court against same-sex marriage in Canada. I was a bit in a froth about sovereignty at that point. Anyway, so during this time I had a conversation with Brent Hawkes, and he said to me, fundamentalists are scared of same-sex marriage because they know it will force families finally to choose between their family members and their dogma. Right? It's going to force that question. And what I've seen and what I'm seeing is the heart is opening in the church. Even the places that I went to do this film, there were people who were supposed to give big, long diatribes about the ugliness of same-sex love, who I just saw them get lost because they were trying to get love in there too, And it wasn't working for them. I feel a bit like Sarah Palin, actually. How's that hopey-changey thing working for you? Because nothing can stop the force of that when the heart opens and the Spirit comes in, right? Way off track, but I loved it. So the reason that the whole danger to the flock thing terrified me too was that I really saw, I've been to Rwanda and I've spoken to the people there, and I know that that's the same kind of language that they talked when they were perpetrating genocide. That was what went out over the radios. Cull the flock, excise the cancer. It's the same thinking that we all know from all our many lifetimes. That's my perspective. And from all the many genocides, right? Including our own. And so the importance then is of the opening of the heart and the deepening of the self is now more than ever, as we all know. I don't need to tell any one of you that, is so imminent. My experience as a child was that whatever came from the deepest places of myself had to be denied and papered over with rules. Exactly because it became from the deepest places of myself. What a mindfuck. Not in a good way. And that's what happened because I was taught that who I was inherently sinful. And certainly not only that my sexuality was sinful, because this is way before that, right? But that who I was inherently sinful and needed to be fixed and needed to be subjugated, right? It's just a recipe for disaster, certainly for me, for intense dissociation. And it strikes me that it makes sense to control the entire being, and especially the sexual urge, straight or gay, and that should be at the root of, I'm going to say it, the institutional church's historic control of humanity over the millennia. Because it's exactly the surrender that lovers experience with each other, not ever, of course, to be confused with submission, but surrender. Well, let's not go into that. I'm talking about really giving up your power and your selfhood and your right to self-determination. That's what I'm talking about. So, never that to anyone, but surrender to a lover. It's that same surrender that's required for union with Spirit. That same surrender to Source or God. That same cosmic ecstasy. It's as if there's an understanding on the part of the institutional church and the historical church that if you can interfere with that mechanism of deep cosmic surrender, then you can interfere with the ability of humanity to deeply connect with Source. And then you're really in control. Because if we're cut off from ourselves at our deepest places and we're cut off from God, we will do almost anything to get that back. Usually starting with self-destructive urges, right?